on board. And we're starting 7 minutes after 7, excuse me. And welcome to our third virtual session for LT 110. Hopefully everyone sees that I am completely caught up on my weeks of content released. I am not yet caught up on my grading, but I will be very shortly. I can tell you that most of you have done fine with everything so far. No one is in jeopardy of their grade, but I'm sure especially for those of you who submitted your presentation, who submitted a presentation, you'd like to have a better sense of where you are. So I am very excited about the way the sessions are going because of last week's session. This week we'll see. We only have 2 people today, but we're going to be covering some different things. And before I broach the content that I wanted to cover with you, may I ask, first of all, what if anyone has questions, either Kathleen or Martin, and you can put them in the chat box. Great. I see people are typing. Okay. WebDewey is something that you should be able to access by going to the correct URL. Let me push that towards you and see if that actually works. Okay. Excuse me. Oh, apologies. Kathleen, are you talking about the classification activity? Did you hear that, Kathleen? Yes. Okay. It was a joint activity where you were using both WebDewey and Classification Web. The WebDewey URL is something I put in the chat window. If that's what you needed, Martin. Okay. Now, perhaps what you wanted, though, Martin, was to actually know how to get on once you get to that website. Is that correct? Because I can share with you, and I'm going to do that now. You should see a screen pop up. Okay, that is not actually the screen that I wanted to share. I am going to stop sharing. Okay, and I'm going to go here and resize my screen. Okay. Okay. Now, I do believe you should be able to see the WebDewey connection screen. Can everyone see that? Okay. What you need to do is to type in the username, the authorization number and password that you received on Blackboard, okay? And at this point, do this. Okay, that's not the right one. I wanted to. Oops. If you go to course information on Blackboard, are you able to see my screen okay, everyone? Okay. On this page, what you'll do is go ahead and click the link that says course information, and that's when you see these two options, okay? And the link for OCLC gives you the Connexion logon, okay, or the Connexion URL. And this is the authorization number, and here is the password, okay? So you use that same combination, and you can do that with the WebDUI URL. You can also access WebDUI by going to Connexion, typing in that information that we just saw, okay, clicking Login, and from the Connexion page, in order to access WebDUI, we click the tab that says DUI Services, and it transfers us. It redirects us to the actual service. And you'll see here, here's the internet address, www.dui.org/webdui. And this you don't have to input, okay? That's just what you see. Does this make sense? Okay, can I get a yes? Kathleen said yes. Martin, are you able to understand what I've just demonstrated? Did I lose Martin? No. That's what you did last night. Were you able to get into the service, Kathleen? Okay, good. Because I did put this on the website, but repetition is key, and I'm used to accessing the services and going between the different ones. So it's fine that you don't understand. I want you to keep asking me until I can try to make it clear for you, okay? And welcome, Evie. It's good to have you with us tonight. Okay. Now, Kathleen asked me to go over the exercises, and that's fine. But I think that I also want to talk about two things. We are going to have an activity where you have to go to your group. Okay. We'll go from here. I'm going to open up Blackboard. It's a little easier to see for me when I resize the window. So I mentioned back in week 8 when I talked about people doing presentations that there would be an activity where you actually had to respond to the presentations, okay? Okay. Maybe it was a week before. Let me look at the content for week 7. I apologize. No, I'm not sure. But part of what I expect for everyone in the class is to respond to the presentations and then to respond to the cataloging project. I want you to gain some familiarity at observing someone else's work and then commenting on it, thinking about what that person has done. Because if someone tells me that they chose a particular record for a book based on an ISBN search, I should be able to do the same thing that they did and hopefully make the same choice. But catalogers have the benefit of using what's called cataloger's judgment. Libraries have the right, when they're using various standards in library cataloging, to use what's called local practice. The Library of Congress has a set of practices, and they used to be referred to as rule interpretations because they dealt with how the Library of Congress interpreted the Anglo-American cataloging rules. With the advent or introduction of RDA, these are now called their practice policy. Okay, actually it's a slightly different term, but it has to do with what they've decided to, how they've decided to act or interpret what the rules are according to RDA. Okay, so they're sharing with all the national and international community what their practices are when they implement RDA. Okay, so oh, welcome, Jay. Great, a fifth person, or rather a fourth person tonight. So that's great. So getting back to the assignment, what I'm going to have you do now that people have submitted their presentation, you'll have an assignment. It might be worth 20 points. It might be a little more, where you are responsible for commenting on a presentation. And I'll have you look at least 2. Each group will look at hopefully 2. And because we don't have as many people who did presentations, I'll get a lot more comments on the presentation. But it'll be harder to comment on the project anyway, so it's a good balance. It is a required activity, and it is to build some awareness of the reality that different people make different decisions when they are cataloging. So because most of the cataloging we do today is shared cataloging, I seem to be a little loud tonight, so I'm trying to control the sound. Can someone tell me, am I sounding very loud on your end? I see someone's typing. People are typing an answer. No, you sound good. Okay, that's great. Because on my side, when I look at the monitoring tool, it sounds like, ooh, very loud. So that will be coming, if not in this week's release, in the next week. Hopefully you notice that I had to combine MARC Record 3 and 4 as a joint activity, and it will now have the April 23rd deadline. Okay. Is that what I said, April 23rd or April 30th? Okay. I clicked the content link. I'm trying to go to week 11. Welcome, Teresa. Due date for the joint MARC 3 and 4 activities. Okay. So those are things you can expect. In terms of what I'd like to do tonight, I wanted to use the week 11 folder and discuss a little bit about this assignment where you're scheduled to arrange for my approval. I need to do something similar to what I did when I had the individual sessions. They won't be that long. I think 15 minutes should be enough for most people. I want to make sure that the items you choose to catalog are ones that you will find quality records for in terms of what the requirements are for the cataloging project. In addition to doing copy cataloging with the records, some of which will require very little editing depending on the books that you selected, and with the media items you probably will have to do more editing. And finally, there will be one of your records that must be presented as an RDA record. So this week I gave you information, hopefully, where you saw RDA records. Yeah, you'll see here I asked you to review various training resources from the Library of Congress pertaining to FRBR and RDA. But, okay, I'm not sure it's going to share this with you. Please let me know if you can see this Word document. I suspect it is not something that's visible to you. So if you could let me know, do you see the RDA bibliographic record practice work form? No. Okay. So hold on. I'm going to go out of here and share. Oh, Teresa, no problem being late. It's catch as catch can. I'm just grateful that you're here because it's a much better fit with the recording to have some live questions. I need to go ahead and stop the sharing so that I can reselect. Okay, because for some reason it's not seeing that I have a Word document. Let's see if it does now. Okay, now it does. Okay, so I am going to select this and select that. I'll tell you in just a minute. Okay. Sorry, it's still misbehaving on my screen, so I want to make sure that I have it resized. I thought I had these all set up, but not what's happening. Appreciate your patience. Okay. I'm going to try it one more time because for some reason it's not seeing everything that I've had here. Okay, so when it comes to sharing, I want to share this. Okay. So at this point, okay. What I was sharing was the RDA. Can you see that? Can everyone see my Blackboard screen? Okay. And when you go to week 11 of the content, you should be able to see a link for the RDA work form. When you click that link, you see this work form. And this will be the one that you'll have to use for your cataloging project in order to complete the RDA version. Okay? So you're going to be submitting resources for 4 records. I had said 4 books, and they can be 4 books, but if you choose to, you can use the same book as an RDA record and as an AACR2 catalog record. Okay, are you able to understand what I'm saying thus far? I now have a grand total of 5 people. Oh no, yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I don't see anything. Yep, but it's choppy. Okay. So I think choppy though, was that Jay? No, it's Therese. Okay. I don't know if it's my voice that's choppy or the screen. I got some tips from CC Confer. They made some suggestions about getting smoother transition. They said that I should scroll less on the screen when I'm sharing, and to try to send you documents ahead of time, put images in PowerPoint. So, okay, that's kind of defeating the purpose. I would have used Blackboard if that's the modality I wanted. So I'm trying to compromise. I've changed the resolution on my monitor so that hopefully in the recording everything will be more visible, more clearly visible. Okay? This example of a work form is different than the work form that I have had you use to do your tagging exercise. Okay? The book's tagging form, which I've now corrected. Okay? It should look like this, where it has a 001 field, which didn't have before. Okay? This particular mark tag, this particular RDA work form doesn't have one, but the one that I will modify and make available for you will have that. Okay? What you want to see is that this has the 020, it has a 040, it has place for indicators. Similar to the cataloging, the copy cataloging tool, it has multiple 1XX fields outlined, the 100, the 110, etc. Okay? Now, one of the biggest changes, there's only a 264 field when you use RDA standard for your cataloging. In the current books tagging field, for our information, we use the 260 field. Okay? So that is a big change. But as you should know or begin to know, and as I mentioned in our virtual session, the biggest changes with RDA have to do with the fact that you catalog what you see. So if there's a typo in the title on the statement of responsibility page or the chief source of information, you input it as is. If there are more than 3 authors in the statement of response, in 3 sources, contributors, whether they're authors or editors, etc., you can put all the ones that are listed on the chief source of information in your 245 field. It's still the 245 field. Okay? So key changes to RDA include, as we see in the work form, that there's a 264 field. Okay? But then the other changes that are most important, the introduction of the 336, 337, and 338 field. Okay? Unless someone had a specific thing that they wanted to do, except for Catherine's question, I know you're going to we're going to cover the classification in a bit. But I'd like to start off by looking at specifically at some sample RDA records. And in the Blackboard, on Blackboard, excuse me, I pointed to this page that has various training resources. Okay, it's a Library of Congress page. It has training specifically for RDA. But when you scroll down, it has the practice work form that I linked separately. And then it has these two modules, which appear in your video presentation subfolder, Part 1 and Part 2. But it also makes reference to there's some sample records, and it's on this page. It might be further down. Hold on. Okay, down here where it says guided practice exercises. Okay. Okay. They actually ask us to do some cataloging. So I'm going to use this for the activity tonight. Are you able to see that page? It's very hard to tell what you're seeing on your side, but that's why I'm discussing with you. And please use your chat box to let me know, unless, of course, you have a mic. Doesn't look like anyone does, okay? Of course, you also are aware you could use your telephone, and then you would be able to initiate questions if you have the telephone line dialed in, okay? So using this practice sheet, okay, and what they had us do was to look at the difference in the 245 field for different records based on what's in the item. Oh my gosh, I left my book at home. I just realized it. Hold on. I'm going to chat, but it seems I left my book with this information at my home. Well, yes, it does seem as though I've left both of the examples that I was going to work with. Last week I worked with Spider Woman, and that is a new publication. I am going to go to Connexion, and I am going to do a search. Okay. So if I do a search in Connexion, I scroll down, and I look for the title Spider Woman. You know what? I don't think I did use the title. I did an ISBN search, and I'm going to see if it's in my search history. School readiness, school readiness. No. Okay. And it hasn't been added yet, I don't think. But I am going to search for Spider Woman. And the name Gutierrez. And remember, you have to scroll down. Okay. When I'm searching for this title, I'm actually looking for a book just recently published by, maybe I misspelled the name. Okay. Here it is. Sonia Gutierrez, and no, I spelled the name properly. I'm going to search now for this author's name, and I go down here. I'm clearing the screen, and if I search for Sonia Gutierrez, I could search as a name, as an author. I could search as a personal name. I'm just going to do a name search and see if I have any records for works by Sonia Gutierrez. Okay, there are books. And you'll notice this is what's called a group display. And a group display is very different than the ones that we've seen so far. We've seen a short list where there are just 3 records that were retrieved by the search results. A group list asks you to go into each group. Let me go back to that page, and I can view the list. I'm sorry. Do you see on the right where it says group results? I click that, I go back to this group, and the groupings are by format. Okay, so books are grouped together, and also then they're subcategorized or sorted on a second level by date. And finally, we have the visual materials, mixed materials, sound recording, computer files. So in this case, they usually start with the oldest records first, and at the bottom, towards the bottom, are the more recent records, followed by those that have no dates. So because I wanted a publication that I know was published in 2013, I start with that group. And so there were records 196 through 291, because this group display shows continuous numeration. Okay? It starts with the first record that includes the name Sonia Gutierrez, or includes both elements of that name, Sonia and Gutierrez. And then it scrolls down. The most recent ones appeared last in the list. Okay? They are in chronological order. It's very hard to read because you have to look for the date. And let's see here. See, this one has multiple dates. It was from some kind of conference. So it's very difficult to work with group displays, with records that are on a group page. The reason they're valuable is because sometimes we don't have enough. That's fine, Kathleen. I saw your note. Thank you. We don't have enough information about a work. An author is not widely published, so there aren't a lot of records. People aren't sure. You'll notice that most of these records are by a Sonia Montserrat Gutierrez Munoz. This is not the Sonia Gutierrez that we had. Why is this such a difficult search? Why do we get nothing? Well, last week, those of you who were here, which I think is only Teresa, you know that I searched for the book, and I showed you a picture of the book, and what has happened is that we could not find a record. It's a new title. It's a small publisher. I am going to show you on camera here just a picture of the item for those of you who weren't here. Okay. Okay, this is a picture of the cover, and it has a, okay, you know how clear that is coming through for you, okay? And it's a parallel title. It's published both in English and in Spanish, and it's called Spider-Woman, La Mujer Araña, and I have additional information, but it's even harder to see from inside the book, okay? So I know that there's information out there, but what I'm finding out by searching OCLC is that no one has cataloged it yet, probably because the Library of Congress did not receive a copy of this book. This book has an ISBN number, however, it's not listed anywhere. If I were to go to Amazon, because quite often we can use Amazon as a source, I don't think it was a match in, yeah, I don't think I saw it as a match here. Here, okay. It doesn't appear that they've made her work available on Amazon. You'll see most of the matches have to do with A Kiss of the Spider Woman and the fact that there was an actress named Sonia in the movie version of that work. Okay, there is a reference to the book in an online website. Okay, so we're hearing confirmation, yes, the book is out there, it's going to be published. It doesn't help us for our bibliographic record. Okay, in fact, the server is not even available that has the information. Okay, at this point, we have to catalog the book from scratch. And next week, I'm going to show you my record that I created using IDA. Why next week? Well, because I didn't get a chance to finish it. I want to make sure, by working with my colleagues, that I've identified it correctly. I've already created the sample record for AACR2 because I'm creating an original record. Not because I expect you to do so, but because I want you to see that the process we've been talking about applies, especially when you have to do original cataloging. And sometimes original cataloging takes place at a very basic level. You just want those key elements that identify an item uniquely. You wouldn't want to share that record on OCLC because it doesn't necessarily have subject headings. It may have a very brief call number, but you create a bibliographic record for your purposes, local practice, the needs of the local library. Okay, would the ISBN number be different for the different languages? Not typically, sometimes, okay? Sometimes there is an ISBN for publications that were issued separately. This was one publication that happens to be in both languages, okay? So there's one ISBN number for the work. Let me call up the, okay, I think I have this printed out. Hold on just one second. Okay, I've done my best to find those papers that I printed off just for tonight's session, and I don't, so I am going to continue with the records I found online, and I'm going to search for that number. You're seeing this, and here's the other record. I'm not too sure you're seeing this one, okay? Okay, I think you're seeing the screen. Please check if you do not see the screen. Okay, Teresa's texting. Kathleen is back here texting, but I don't see it yet. You see part of Blackboard, okay. I don't know what caused the sharing. Okay. For some reason, the screen it's lost its sizing. Okay. Okay. Do you see the entire screen, Martin? Right now I have the Library of Congress up. Seems off to the right. Yeah, there's something going on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the sharing because it's not behaving itself here. Okay. Okay, now of course, they're resized properly. Okay, this is sized properly. That's sized properly. Okay, this should be sized properly. See, the whole one doesn't. Okay. Going to try again. Okay. So we have OCLC right here, and we have Blackboard. I'm going to go ahead and just let it play out, because what I have for you tonight, in order to work with the classification exercise, I'm going to go to Classification Web, and I'm going to go to WebDewey. Can everyone see my WebDewey? Or can you see just part of it? If you see part of it, I'll change the sizes on my screen so you can see all of it. Part on the left. Okay, you can't see what's on the left. How about that? Is that better? Okay, to the left for some and the right for others. Okay. I have it full size. How are you seeing it now? That's good, just part. Great thing, yes, the left is blank. Wow. Okay. Well, let's do our best here. The screen should be visible to you on the recording. We'll see what happens. But this is WebDewey. With WebDewey, if you look at the activity that we had, you were responsible to, go ahead and bring that up. This is actually the key, so I'll just look at the one that doesn't have the answers. Classification of activity. Okay. With WebDewey, the first thing that I ask you to do is to consider that you're classifying a book about professional ethics. But I specifically ask you to search the relative index. In order to search the relative index, what you do is go ahead and search, but what you could do is select the relative index from one of these areas. Do you remember which volume has the relative index? Duh. It would be hard to remember when you're not sure. So you could go to advanced search and actually search in the relative index for professional ethics. Oh, you mean I was here before? And when I click the search button, I get a list of results. From the list of results, the first match tells me that in the class 174, I have occupational ethics, okay? And when I go there and it says class here, professional ethics, ethics of work, okay? So I didn't match exactly the language that's in WebDewey in terms of that heading under 174, but from the notes information, it tells me to class here, professional ethics, okay? So your assignment was to go ahead and find a place to classify a book about professional ethics. So that was the answer I was expecting. Now, the next question, number 2, your book is about the country of Austria. Browse the schedule because there are different features for accessing the content in WebDewey. This is all content from the 4 printed volumes, but our access, our ability to get what we need is different thanks to this web tool. So by using the browse feature, I'm looking for Austria. Okay. And I'm going to get various results. And it said here, Dewey numbers with captions. That's what I'm looking for. And I said to find the appropriate Dewey number. So I click a search. Then I get some results. Huh. Austria, no partial match. C, did I spell it right? Nearby terms. Okay, so when you go to 999, you're talking about extraterrestrial world? I don't think so. Austria. Why did that not give me numbers? Okay, so if I searched the relative index, that would be more useful because I get the country of Austria in terms of where it's mentioned in the tables, because there are various tables found that you have to use with base numbers from Dewey Decimal Classification. But by browsing the relative index, I can find this number, 943.6. Okay? And when I go to 943.6, it says subdivisions are added for Austria and Liechtenstein. But it says for ancient history, see 4 to 476, see a different number. But basically, the 900s is where you find biography. It's where you find information on history for different countries in the world. And you'll notice that the instructions here tell you to add as instructed under 930 through 990. 930 through 990 in the printed schedule is where you're told you will find various numbers, classification numbers for different countries in the world. And it breaks it down, 930 to history of specific continents, okay? And when you go down to 930, that's what starts history of the ancient world. 940 through 990, history of specific continents. By clicking on the links, I go through the different areas. So if I want Europe, because that's where Austria is located, I would get to 940. Okay, 940 is where in here? Okay, Russia, neighboring eastern countries. It's a little hard to tell. Where would I place Austria? I'm thinking I would place it near Germany because it has a border with Germany. Okay, and in fact, when you go to that section of the numbers, it takes you to 943.6. It lets you see that, okay? A built number, that is a phrase that applies to Dewey classification where you're given specific instructions and you actually have that number not because it appeared in the original schedule, but because of the flexibility of the schedule it's come about. And sometimes a place becomes so important that then the number is added to the schedule, okay? So the next entry, and it's not all intuitive. Let me check to see if there are questions here. Okay. Okay, very good. I lost my Dewey. Oh, there it is. Okay. And here, the next question was, your book is on the general history of the United States. Search all fields in Dewey. So I go back to search, and I want to search all fields in Dewey to find the best number. Okay. So I can just put in a general search here and type history of, oh, this is what I did previously with United States history. Okay, and then I click search. Okay, United States arts. All of these original entries that start with T refer to tables where you are told how to use information pertaining to the United States in various places. So in sociology, you may have a reference to use table 1, to use table 5, because there's specific tables that are primarily geographic entry or interest. Okay, see table 5, it tells you people of the United States, Americans versus English, British, etc. But we weren't looking for how to use information about the United States in a different discipline. And so if we, it says page 1 of 17, so I could continue to browse. But if I had remembered that history is where you find information, I'm sorry, the 900s are where you find about information about history, I could have started there, and then I would have clicked the grouping that says history for specific continents. I continue there. And I'm looking for North America, which is 970. Many of us know this, having been raised in public libraries that had that use Dewey Decimal Classification. So having had homework to do on history, on the United States, etc., we would know specifically that 970 or 900 at least pertains to the United States. So if I go to History of North America, which is 970, underneath that it says countries and localities, because as you know, North America includes Mexico, includes Canada. So specifically for the United States, 973. So the answer here, your book is on the general history of the United States, is 973. Does this make sense? Okay. Now Kathleen asked specifically about this exercise. So were you asking about number 3 on this side or on the classification website? Let me scroll back up to see if I have that here. I then covered the worksheet. I had a question on 3. Okay, I see you're typing. I don't yet see what you typed. I'll just wait patiently. Question 2 pertaining to Dewey, or question 2 pertaining to classification web? Okay. Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein, a smaller nation that borders Austria and is classed in the same number because they're so small that in order to save time, save space, because there's one of the differences between Dewey and Library of Congress, the Dewey classification system is closed classification. It's not going to expand. It's going to have 0, 100s through 900, and that's it, okay? And then with the Library of Congress, they can keep adding numbers because they're an exhaustive classification. They're just going to continue to add numbers. And it is different when there's a built number in the Dewey Decimal System. I'm not going to give you details about that, but if you read the content of the introduction and what the textbook shares, and the handouts that I gave you, how you use the classification is different. That's why there are 20+ volumes of Library of Congress classification. I have an older edition here in my office, and there are only 4 volumes in the Dewey Decimal Classification. That's expanded from 2 when Melville Dewey introduced this in the 1800s. It's not very big, okay? So I'm glad you had the right answer. Does anyone have questions about the classification web portion of the activity? Because that's the one I find a little more challenging. I had to really work with it. I'm not as familiar with classification web, even though I have worked by catalog primarily in LC classification. Okay, no questions on that. So no one wants me to review that per se. Okay, that's fine. Okay, Teresa's saying something. I'll just pause here. I can review, okay. If there's time, yes, there is time. Okay, so I've shown you Web Dewey. You should now be able to see classification web, and you click where it says log on. And remember that the information on how to log on is available both in, I think it's the week 10 folder, excuse me, but all of our log on information now is available through the course information link On the left-hand side, the Blackboard menu, Classification Web LT110 Class Account. You click there, and you'll see a PDF. The URL or internet address is classificationweb.net. Username is Palomar, and the password is LT110-2013. Okay? So when we are accessing Classification Web, we log on, and it actually takes you to the menu screen first before asking you to log on. And one of the nice things here is that you can actually search the subject heading. Okay? But we're not going to do that right now. We are going to look at number 5 on the classification activity sheet. And the first thing I asked you to do is browse. That means you use that link that says browse. And here is where it asks you to confirm your logon. And you have to again select browse. But first, you have to type in QH540 through QH541.264. I think it lets you, whoops. It'd be good not to make typos and not to have extraneous data. Okay. And actually, I think it just reads the first one, so I get the same results if I just had put in QH540. But what I wanted you to see, well, it was slightly different. What I wanted you to see is that I wanted you to go through the whole range up to 541.264. Okay? So here it takes us up to 541.15. And if we continued, we did just 540. See, it tells us 5415. So click here for more options. Okay, you can actually see the hierarchy. Very interesting the way this works. So from 540, it just kind of has a listing of things. And I said after you browse that, tell me what number might you use for a dictionary of the environment. So 540 has to do with 540 has to do with ecology, class here, work, and it's a little hard to tell because it looks like this was what you were getting, but when I had QH 541.264, okay, so it started with 540. It says periodicals, but it's really talking about ecology. And the way you know that is because at the top it says biology, general, ecology, periodical society. So it's really not easy to read, in my opinion. Okay, it has these little frames that you can push up or down, but it's kind of hard to pinpoint where we're at because the way that it's highlighted periodicals of what? Pertaining to all and sundry, or periodicals pertaining to sociology. You have to use what's also in the top frame. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So the first question, dictionary of the environment, well, it's not going to be in 540 because that's for periodicals. Do we see dictionary somewhere? I'm not going to give you an answer. I'm going to wait for someone to answer me. And it's okay to guess, but looking at the screen, 540.4, okay. Okay, 540.4, dictionaries and encyclopedias. Yay! Good job. It wasn't too difficult, okay? And the next question is economy of nature a textbook in basic ecology. So we're not talking about economics, we're talking about economy of nature, we're talking about ecology. So 540 pertains to ecology, and we wanted a textbook. So we're looking for something that might say textbook or might say general work or something. Is there anything that said textbook here? There was a handbook, addresses and essays, okay, biodiversity C, biography. Okay, 541. Evie suggests 541, which would be general work, treatises, and textbooks. Yay! Okay, so I wasn't trying to make it too difficult, but I wanted to give you a sense, an introduction to this tool. Most of you will never see this again after our class, but we don't know what your future is in library. So we're trying to prepare you for the best tools that are used throughout departments working in tech services for people who are in tech services departments, okay? So this is a very useful tool. If you're not able to use this tool, however, okay, the Library of Congress has, I go to their link for librarians. I sent this to you elsewhere in the class or mentioned it or pointed you to it. It has a free classification outline. So if you wanted to find information about ecology, well, you might go to science, you might have gone to technology, but let's say you realized it was probably going to be in the portion of the classification that includes science, okay? So when you go to QH, says biology. If you know about ecology, you might recognize that it includes ecology. Otherwise, you'd have to kind of keep doing what we call expanding it. So on the free version, this is a web-based resource, but it is a PDF. You can click on some areas and you'll get information, but not on everyone, okay? If I go to T for technology, it takes me to the top page for technology, the top of the classification, and then I have to scroll through and see what I might be interested in. This is what we would call the poor man's version of the classification. It's the outline. It's available free of charge. Usually, it's really at the top level of the outline. This is what you see in most libraries that are trying to educate their users into the Library of Congress classification system. Not with the detail that you'll need as a cataloger, as a library technician working in technical services. So this is a much better site, the Library of Congress classification outline. So I'm going to walk again through using it for Q, science. And what happens is it's actually one document, and it just lets you scroll through it. There is also a Word version available. If you want to download those things and have them available on your computer, it's not worth it because they update this periodically on the web. So it's better to have the most current version of something like this. It doesn't hurt to save it in case the Library of Congress decides we're not having free stuff anymore. People have to buy everything they want from us. It's not likely to happen because this is a national resource, okay? It's a government resource to assist the people, first of all the Congress, and then by extension all those of us who need information, okay? So if you were using the free version, you go to the website, you're taken, if you select a class, you're taken to a PDF document which had some links internally to other subsections of the class, okay? So here I just modeled using it for QH, and for ecology, this didn't take me anywhere else. So I couldn't have gotten that level of detail that we got with our activity for the textbook, for the history. And the last one here was teaching ecology. So any suggestions for teaching ecology? And by the way, 541 was correct, EB, as well as Therese also noticed that. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen, you also answered. And it's fine if you didn't answer. I'm just giving you some options. Okay, 541.142, 541.142, 541.142, which would be handbooks, tables, formulas. That was for teaching ecology. Okay, did I get that wrong? Maybe 142. Okay, this is why I wanted you to scroll throughout, because I wanted you to go beyond this, but it didn't seem to like that when I put that as a phrasing. So I'm going to have you scroll from 541.2. Okay, because if we browse QH 541.2, you will see that 0.215 is then used for outlines and syllabi, okay, and that that would be a better match, a better fit for teaching ecology, okay, teaching methods and aids, outlines, syllabi. Oh, I'm sorry, general works above it. But you can see that the specific things, if you had an outline for a class, if you had teaching methods, but actually the answer here was QH 541.2, general works, study and teaching research. But you wouldn't have known that without having all this detail up here. Does that make sense? You're starting to get a better sense of the outline. Okay. Now, the second half of it was a little different. I asked you to go to a different class, okay, and I said to search for this specific number, and to scroll through, and the number was RA 576, and to scroll through numbers in that class. So I wanted you to search it, actually. So, classification number here. 546, oops, QA. No, RA. 546. Let me make sure that's 576. I'm sorry. It was right there because I've done the search several times. Okay. So this is a different display, and you could see maybe that would have been a better search for what we did before. But I wanted you to get more experience, and I was using the activities from the Library of Congress, not reinventing the wheel, but selecting from their activities and exercises something that would be meaningful in terms of helping you understand this product, okay? So here you were asked to do this. Search the LCC number, RA576, scroll through the numbers in that class, then determine where you would class a book on. The impact of air pollution on public health in. So air pollution, yay, that's the number, okay? 576 through 578, air pollution general, right? The impact of air pollution on public health, okay? So 578.6 in the United States. 578.6, Congress General Works, okay? 578.6, General Works, okay? It says public aspects of medicine, public health, preventative medicine, air pollution, general works. But then it says by region or country, specifically the United States. Okay, so 578.6.5, because we're talking about general works, okay, for the United States. Okay. So I could do this, or I could do it here. Okay. It's a little hard to understand. You'll notice at the top it changed then, because it gives me exactly what that region is. If I click there and select hierarchy, that changes again. Okay. So the answer that I was looking for was RA 576.5. Okay. And now if I wanted to do Central America, or if I wanted to do the United States, I wanted you to be able to see by region or state, by region or country. So who has a guess to give? Oh, good. Nothing so good. Okay, good. Kathleen, you understood why I needed to go to 5. Oh, that was the last question. So now we're in RA. Who has a suggestion for a work that is about the impact of air pollution on public health in Paris, France? Evie, come on. Paris, France, we're talking. Okay, 7. Very good. Now, 576.7, but what else does it tell me? By other regions or countries, hierarchy, by other regions or countries. What does this A through 7 mean? How do I apply that? I'll see subject correlation. I'll see subject heading 053 search notes. Okay. Were there notes for this? That would be for me to make notes. But 576.7. The MARC record, I'm taking to the MARC record for that topic. Okay. It's a 153 schedule record because this is a classification mark. Remember, there are 5 versions of MARC. Almost sure that I can only get 4, but I'll try again for 5. There's bibliographic MARC, which is the language, the standard coding that allows computers to represent or to discuss, to communicate about bibliographic records. There's bibliographic MARC, there's authority MARC, there's classification MARC, there's holdings MARC format, and there's community. I got all 5 tonight. That's a red letter day. Okay, let me see if anyone suggested an answer. Okay, yes, that's good. Now, who said point A? Because A through 7 really tells me that. Okay, let me go back here. A through 7 is for the countries. Okay, it's not quite as clear. If I were to do tables here, if they had given me an option for tables, that might have been more helpful. But if I go here and say tables, table class, and I'll see class numbers, okay? So if I put in the class number, RA 576.7, see what happens here. Oops. This is a very hard system because I wanted to browse the table ID in class. So it's not giving me what I wanted. If I did AZ and I tried to browse that as a table, it doesn't give it to me. So let me do this. Let me type RA 576.7 AZ. Okay. And
this was taking me to a table that has the various countries, but you'll notice that it's North America. If I did F, okay, just trying to see if it would give me, if this is not the right table. So let's go back to the class. But in your PowerPoint, they actually clarify this, so let me see. I don't think I can point it out, but I'll try to clarify it next week. I apologize. It's A through Z, but you should have been able to, what I was trying to give you in the question, but can we bring that back up? 5, 7, 6, 7. Okay, so I think I did it. Okay. 0.7 by region or country. Okay. So the A through Z actually is a table that you have to use for country regions. I'd have to find the table, but the Library of Congress actually has a specific table to use with geographic headings for the RA class number. It's a little different than Dewey Decimal because they use a table that applies in every area where you are going to subdivide geographically. I'll leave it at that. And actually, it is 8:29. So we're kind of through with tonight. All we did was go through homework. I didn't really introduce new content. Is it necessary? Oh, for the answer, not to worry. Yeah, I would like you to put A or to use the number, and I will make an announcement about that. Hold on just one second. Okay. I'm pulling out my print volume of this. This is a case where it's a little easier to see and to track when you have it visually displayed. Okay, but it says A through Z throughout here, but there was a portion where it told you earlier in the classification schedule that A through Z you should see this table. Okay, so I'm trying to see what page that's on. I doubt I'm going to find it for tonight, so I'll have to put that in my update. And I thank you for coming tonight, especially I have one returning customer, so thank you, Teresa. But most of all, my objective in having these sessions is to allow people to ask questions on things that are problems, but also to present information that's harder to capture in our weekly content folders. It would require so many videos that I didn't think that was that helpful at this point in the class development for the first time that we're offering it online. So thank you for attending tonight. Thank you to the captioner. I guess it was not Jennifer. That's who we had last week. But regardless, I appreciate the efforts of the CCC Confer resource because this allows us to create content on the fly that makes an online class or much more interesting by having some dynamic issues. So thank you for attending tonight, everyone. And tell your friends, bring them next time. Have a group party, and then you can have an LT virtual session. Who knows, you might get some kind of, you might have some kind of, what do they call that, playoff, I don't know. You might win a prize. Okay, so thanks a lot, and I'm going to close for tonight unless anyone has a question for me. I did get an email, I think, from Martin, and what you need to recognize is that I have to actually schedule a session with you. Those of you doing the cataloging project, use the online assignment link and give me some times that are good for you. Next Monday, I'll be available between 6 and 8 probably, and I'm thinking 15 to 20-minute segments. So all I'm trying to do is to verify that there's enough information for your titles, verify that you understand the process, and that way you can concentrate on applying this. What you need to know is we have LT 110 Test 2 coming up, another open book activity, but there will be specific questions about the tool. Some of them might really kind of test your knowledge in terms of going out and getting into the resource and seeing the basics. So thanks a lot. I'll let you go. We're over, but we started a little late, so have a good evening, and I'm going to turn off the recording, and so that'll be it.